following is from a civil rights attorney in Chester County, the county that I live in Pennsylvania, complaining that members of a school board in a local school district were asking questions about a transgender policy regarding, well, let's take a look.
So last week, the members of my old school board in Olney Valley, Pennsylvania decided that it was up for debate whether they, as a public school, had to adhere to federal and state civil rights requirements. As if that was just like an option that they could, decide not to take.
Mama, I know I'm a demon. It ain't nothing she could do but pray for me.
These are the sort of policies that are being quietly embedded in our schools that remove authority, the utmost authority, from the parents and giving it to the teachers. Teachers and school districts and administrators have the ability to rename your child, to assign your child a different gender identity, and to effectively change your child's entire identity behind your back and groom them and school them about how to code switch between school and home.
My principal just approved our district's first transition closet. We'll be working with the organization The Transition Closet to provide clothes for transgender, non-binary, and gender-exploring youth who maybe don't have the access or the safety to get those clothes in their personal lives. They'll be able to come to school and change into the clothes that make them feel more at home and more like themselves. And I just think that's lovely.
They are teaching children how to keep secrets from their parents. They're teaching children how to lie to parents, how to get away with things, how to be deceitful. What the fuck do you think that this does to benefit children? This is an attorney working in Chester County who is angry. The members of the school board were challenging these policies and asking questions about them. Who the hell are you?
This all came up in a discussion about adopting new policies, ones that were vetted and provided by the Pennsylvania School Board Association, people who know what the law is and how school boards should apply it to support their students and also make sure that they're not getting sued. But that wasn't enough for the school board. No. There must be an agenda behind these laws. And how dare they not allow us to discriminate against transgender students and teachers? Like, that's our God-given right. I can't, you guys.
I don't care that the school board decided this was a good idea. I don't care that this is based off of a law. Because you know who makes laws? Humans. You know who's biased and flawed? Humans. You know who we need to challenge? Humans. You don't have ultimate authority. Go fuck yourself if you think it's a problem that parents and teachers and the school board who is elected to serve the interests of the community are asking questions.
I just want to say that the opinions that were expressed by certain board members on January 10th do not reflect my opinions. And I am very sorry that I didn't express that night. Thank you.
I would like to say that I agree with Ms. Harry, and again, my apologies.
And I would like to say I agree with Mrs. Zackin and Mrs. Terry, and I have always stood for every individual, and I will continue to stand for every individual student, no matter who they are. And when they come through this front door, we are here to protect and serve. And I say that too.
I agree with the comments made by my colleagues this evening.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to apologize for asking questions. Totally different.
Hey, come on. Don't need that tonight.
Same here.
It's just all it is.
We are here to ask the questions. We are here to question whether or not the policies and what legal ramifications come with them.
There was a case in Virginia, in Loudoun County, Virginia, where there was this predatory boy And the school district down there had things in place for, bathroom use for anybody, the way it seems to me, as I understood it. And it was a predatory heterosexual boy, put a skirt on one day and said, "You can't touch me." And he had his way, and that's not happening.
And it's
I am
happened
here
twice,
for every
not
child.
just once, twice.
I'm here for every child. I'm not willing to throw my kids to the wolves.
I would like to add that as a community member, as a parent myself, I would not want to have that horrid crime committed on my watch. I do not want to be a part of that. To have a child.
Oh, none of us want to be part of that. I mean, to make it sound like it's going to happen.
But that's where do you draw the line of and where do you do the protection? How do you protect the other kids? How do you protect the girls from, a biological male going into the bathroom?
But we do not allow and have not allowed that or bathroom use.
The one issue I take is you were never told you couldn't ask questions. Matter of fact, I have emails I sent to both of you encourage you to ask questions when you have them. I also cautioned you might not like the answers.
There is nothing appropriate about teaching children and schooling kids on how to deceive their parents. Every single parent in Pennsylvania should be livid right now and should be making noise. And I don't care if I'm alone, I'm going to be making noise April 25th at my local school board. Because this isn't okay. This is insane. In my last video, I talked about the policy at Great Valley High School, and I said if anybody can find the policy, please send it to me. Well, one of my wonderful subscribers went and did just that while I was still on stream, because that's how fucking amazing you guys are, and got me the school policy. So let's take a look, shall we? All right, so let's take a look at the Great Valley School District transgender policy. Purpose. It is the policy of this district to provide an equal opportunity for all students to achieve their maximum potential through the programs offered in schools regardless, among other factors, gender, gender identity, and gender expression. Notice that they don't talk about sex. Because that's, less important than a gender identity. Because, our biological sex isn't the source of our oppression or anything like that. Delegation of responsibility. In an effort to ensure that the transgender and gender non-conforming students are provided with such an equal opportunity to achieve their maximum potential through the district programs, and in order to ensure that transgender and gender non-conforming students are provided with equal access to all school programs and activities, and to assure the safety, comfort, and healthy development of transgender and gender nonconforming students while maximizing such students' social integration and while other students and minimizing stigmatization and isolation, the board adopts the guidelines outlined below. That was one sentence. This is an official document. That was one sentence. So it's already laying the groundwork for allowing trans-identified males into female sports, because we know, and it's not the other way around, because we know that trans-identified females are not entering male sports because they can't compete. There's a reason why we have sex-segregated sports. And we also know that these kids are far less likely than adults to be medicalized. So these will just be boys who are surging with testosterone, who are hitting peak puberty, playing on the girls' teams, taking away scholarship opportunities, taking away, school opportunities, chances to play at university and collegiate level, losing spots on the teams because we know that school sports at this age are more competitive. Maybe a girl's knocked from varsity to JV, or maybe she's knocked off the JV team altogether, and boys will start to take over. So that's not an equal opportunity. Again, this is when equality and giving everybody equal opportunity actually makes the playing field unequal. There's a reason that we make this sex-based protections. And it's talking about protecting gender non-conforming students. How about protecting gender non-conforming students from predatory teachers who want to try to transition them and say that, they're not really female just because they're gender nonconforming, or they're not really male just because they're gender nonconforming.
I am an out teacher at my school, out as both bisexual and trans, and a lot of other teachers on TikTok were wondering how I managed coming out to my students. And it's a really interesting story. So this was right before the pandemic. I came back to my school after being away from it for a while, during which time I transitioned. So none of the kids knew me as trans, but I wanted to talk about it. So what I did is, as soon as I came back, I joined up with the GSA, realized how many questions the kids had, and decided the best thing to do would be to host a Q&A. So the kids made up a whole bunch of flyers, and then one day during lunch, we hosted the tea talk. It was a triple entendre of T as in trans, T as in spilling the tea, and T as in we literally served them tea. It was great. It was a huge success. So many people showed up. We didn't have nearly enough tea for everyone. And I spent about 10 minutes talking about the difference between gender, sex, and sexual orientation, and then also talking about my own life story, sort of like the highlight reel of how I decided to come out. And then for the remaining 30 minutes, the kids asked questions and I gave answers wherever I felt comfortable. None of the kids asked anything too intrusive, so it was fine. The 6th graders asked a lot of literal fact-based questions, like asking what certain terms meant and stuff like that. And the 8th graders asked stuff that was more emotional, like how did it feel to do, or what was the hardest part about blah, blah, blah. It was a really great opportunity. A lot of the kids, I came to realize, had so much in them, so much welling up that they wanted to talk about or ask about, and they just didn't know how to do that. Maybe they wanted to share some of their own experiences. Maybe they wanted to know how to be a better ally. Maybe they just wanted to know they weren't alone. But without a sort of formalized event, they didn't feel comfortable coming to me and asking me these questions that I was so ready to answer. Now, I will say I was fortunate enough to have been an assistant teacher at my school for 2 years before I came out, so I knew that the school would be accepting. I was also in New York City, so I knew I wouldn't get a lot of parent backlash. But I highly recommend talking with staff, principals, to get a gauge for if you can do something like this, because it's super worth it. And since that event, I have been a teacher that students can come to. I've spent hours on Zoom last year talking with kids who needed to understand themselves better. I've been someone that students come to when they're upset and there's a problem. They know they can turn to me. It's been really invaluable. But I need to share my absolute favorite story. During the tea talk itself, I was talking about when I specifically came out as trans, and one of the kids just goes bug-eyed. And he's like, "Wait, you're trans?" And I'm like, "Yeah, didn't you read the sign that says Remy talks about being trans?" And he goes, "Oh, I just came for the free tea." I love this kid.
Those sort of really toxic ideas. How will we protect kids from that? No, see, it's only protecting them in the way that you think that they should be protected. And in fact, it's leaving them vulnerable to gender ideology and the horrors that come along with that in terms of medicalization, further isolation. And we know that the social transitioning of children almost puts them on a path of medicalization. Gender identity, a person's deeply held internal sense of psychological knowledge of their own gender, regardless of the gender they were assigned at birth. Well, hold on. Is it the gender that they were assigned? Or do you mean from their biological sex? Because if they're gender non-conforming, so it's so circular, because it's okay, so if their gender that they were assigned at birth was assigned to them based off of observation of their biological sex, right? And those are two different things. So what's the difference between a gender non-conforming female and a trans man? Just one wants to be said that they are male when we know that that's not true. Whatever happened to be, hey, you know what? Girls can be anything. Girls can like to play sports and dig in the sand, and they don't have to like the color pink, and boys can like pink, and all these arbitrary things that, it used to be that what Benjamin Franklin wore a wig. That's now considered a feminine thing. It wasn't always that way. Men wore kilts and dresses. These things change all the time. They're fluid because it's a construct. It's bullshit. The only thing that really matters about designating somebody is an immutable quality such as sex. Everything else that we assign to sex, all these attributes, are arbitrary. Gender expression. The way a person expresses gender in a way such as dress, grooming, hairstyle, behavior, activities, interests, speech, mannerisms, etc. Gender nonconforming is a term to describe people whose gender expression differs from stereotypical expectations about how they should look or act based on the gender they were assigned at birth. Traditional gender categories, or identify as both genders or as gender neutral. Again, what do you mean both genders? What's a woman then? Somebody who likes to sweep and clean up and wear dresses? That's not a woman. That's not what a woman is. These are just superficial standards that have been imposed upon females. The only thing that matters about a female, about what makes a female, is her biology. It's like, oh, you want to reduce women to their, genitals. No. Women, that's what makes a woman different from a man, is our genitals and our biological reality. What makes us all human is all the other stuff that comes with that. But yes, no, our biological reality of being human is what pretty significant when you compare ourselves to a horse. A horse's biological reality is pretty different from that of a human. So yes, females are different than that of males. Guidelines, privacy. Now this is the really scary part, and this is the part that really needs to be brought up at every single school board meeting. Privacy, confidential health, or educational information. All persons, including students, have a right to privacy, which includes the right to keep private one's transgender status or gender nonconforming presentation in school. Information about a student's transgender status, legal name, or gender assigned at birth may constitute confidential medical or educational information. Parents are always entitled to a child's medical and educational information. Let's be very clear. They are trying to emancipate our children without due process. They are deciding that parents are unfit without due process or burden of proof. This is unconstitutional. This is appending parental rights and disintegrating the very fabric of the family. Disclosing such information to other students, their parents, guardians, or other third parties may violate privacy laws. This needs to be challenged. This is going to get challenged. Such as the Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. Therefore, school personnel should not disclose information that may reveal a student's transgender status or gender nonconforming presentation to others, including the student's parents, guardians, and or other school personnel, unless legally required to, or unless the student has authorized such disclosure. The children can decide whether or not to include their parents in their school, educational, or medical, social activities.
Teachers, tips for when a student comes out to you. Great! That student must trust you and feel really safe. Make sure you thank them for that trust. Now there are 2 questions that I want you to work into the conversation. 1. What does that term or identity mean to you? Whether you've heard of it before or not, even if it's a term you use for yourself, ask. Because identity labels are super personal and you want more information about what the student is trying to communicate to you. 2. With whom can I use that term, name, or pronoun? You don't know who that student is out to and who they're not. Are they comfortable with the class knowing, other teachers, the whole school, their family at home? Outing someone in the wrong circumstances makes them less safe. So you as the teacher need to learn how to code switch about this student's identity because their safety is the #1 concern. Oh, and thanks for being an ally. Good job.
This is not okay. This is illegal. This is illegal. This must be challenged immediately. Transgender and gender nonconforming students have the right to discuss and express their gender identity and expression openly to decide when, with whom, and how much to share such private information. When contacting the parent/guardian of a transgender or gender nonconforming student, school personnel should use the student's legal name and the pronoun corresponding with the student's gender assigned at birth unless the student, parent, or guardian has specified otherwise. So the only time they will honor the parent's preference corresponding with the parent, or unless the student says otherwise. But otherwise, it is not, the parents are just not part of the conversation. And again, as you can see in these little TikTok videos, and the reason why it's important that we're looking at this garbage is because this is what kids are being fed. They're being pumped the message that, oh, your parents are most likely not going to accept you. That's just part of it. That just comes with it. That's usually just part of the package deals, that all parents are ignorant, and we, the school, we're going to liberate you so you can be your true, authentic self, which is, ironically, divorced from who you are.
On the first day of school, introduce yourself and your pronouns. And instead of calling attendance out loud, have each student introduce theirself and their pronouns. Additionally, avoid using gender terms like boys and girls. Instead, use terms like scholars and students.
Pass it, don't say.
We could have had it all.
Okay, groomer.